Tony Dean's Porsche. Dean's car has an engine less than one-half the size of the competition. His strategy is to first finish, which he almost always does, and hope for the right circumstances to finish first, which he never has.
Welcome to MotherShip Racing. I'm your host and driver, Ellie. That opening quote was from a 1970 Can-Am race at Road Atlanta, where Tony Dean pulled off the impossible, coming from 10th starting position to pick off a win against ridiculously overpowered cars. If you know anything about the Can-Am series, you know that they were some absurd pieces of machinery at the top end, with McLaren being a dominating force for a number of years, putting together some ridiculously absurd machines. And despite the fact that they were ridiculously fast, they were also, of course, on the edge of technology. And, you know, they didn't always finish the race. Sometimes they crashed, and sometimes they blew up, and sometimes their engines died, and sometimes their transmissions crapped out, and sometimes their suspensions gave out. And, you know, all that sort of fun stuff happened all the time through these races, because these things were right on the absolute edge. These Can-Am races also had a bunch of second-tier cars running in them that were typically a lot slower, a lot underpowered from the top cars, but were pretty much almost always guaranteed to finish the race. And Tony Dean drove one of those cars in a Porsche, ironically, who went on to dominate the series later on in the near the end of the Can-Am series. And on this particular day in 1970 at Road Atlanta, Tony Dean just happened to find himself in the right spot to pull himself in for the win after literally everybody in front of him crashed, had a mechanical failure, or had a driver error of some kind to take themselves out of the race. I bring this up because I am posting a race that I recently ran. One of my first wins. I actually think this is my first legitimate win. I might explain what that means later on in the segment, but I'm pretty sure it's my second win in a multiplayer field on the Forza multiplayer online setup. So these are against other real drivers, not against the computer setup. Right now you're watching the opening laps of the race that I ran. I got the third pole position to start off, which is pretty typical for me. I almost never have the fastest car on the grid, and I almost never have the best conditions on the grid, not least because I drive with computer brake-in turned on. So while that gives me the ideal speed to make it through corners without having traction issues, it of course also means that I don't have ideal braking. That somebody who does manual braking and is good at the game can achieve going into corners. On the other hand, it also means that I 100% have my foot on the accelerator coming out of corners immediately when said action is required. So I might have a bit of an advantage coming out of corners with the computer braking, and definitely a disadvantage, I think, coming into corners and through the corners with the computer braking, because the computer braking will slow me down to the accepted speed for the corner, and that's not always the fastest speed you can take a corner out, as anybody who has done racing typically knows. So yeah, it's been a fun race. You can see here I have a bit of an issue on the third lap coming through, and I lose a couple of positions. So I was running third all the way through the first few laps where I started, and I had an issue there. Got dropped back into fifth. That changes relatively quickly here. Of course, anybody who's done racing recognizes that we're driving Laguna Sega at the moment. Lovely, ridiculously fun course. That last little downhill corkscrew section is got to be one of one of my top 3 sections of any racetrack in any sim game that I've ever played. I just love that. That is like boatloads of fun going through there. So yeah, we managed to drop back a bit here. But as it turns out, this is one of those cases where, you know, if you just have a nice, plodding, consistent race where you put in decent laps all the way through and, you know, are somewhere on the grid near the end of the race, you just might find the conditions to actually pull off a win. And without being too spoilery, down the road, we'll see what that happens. Let's get back to some of the action here as we go along. Like I say, I'm in 5th place now. The first place driver went out very quickly off the start. And you might have noticed as I was babbling about the Can-Am stuff there in the first lap, I had quite a battle between first and second going through that first lap, where we had some pretty decent, I think, open wheel-to-wheel racing. That was quite a lot of fun, I think. And especially the segment through this through the corkscrew was just a blast because we were wheel-to-wheel through the corkscrew. I mean, I got to think in the real world, if I'm driving a real car in the real world, wheel-to-wheel down that corkscrew, I'm fucking terrified within an inch of my life. But hey, in a sim game, it's a boatload of fun, man. There's a lot of sim racing that I feel that way about, that I would be fucking terrified, butt-clenchingly terrified in an actual car. But you know, just having the time of my life here in a sim game. So at this stage, I was saying the leader went off real quick, and he did. But some of these racers had some weird pit strategies. There's a few of them that came out with soft tires at the beginning of this 11-lap race. No, sorry, 8-lap race, which I knew from my initial analysis was going to mean at least one pit stop to change tires somewhere in the race. It looked like medium tires would have got me through the race fine, but I elected to go with hards just to make sure I didn't have to do a pit stop on this. That's one of the significant things that got me the win in this one, because around lap 4 and lap 5, we passed the leader as they go in for the pit stops to change tires. And that happens a couple more times through the course of the race to put us up into 3rd place again. Without actually ever really battling our way back into 3rd. I think we battled our way into 4th. I think we got 1 position back after the 4th place driver made a bit of an error, and we capitalized on it. But for the most part, it was one of those situations where I was pretty much resigned at this point to be 5th, and you know, unless somebody up front did something stupid, and I could capitalize on it. So it's always kind of fun to be able to put in laps like this where you're kind of by yourself on the track and you're able to just kind of do your own thing. But of course, it's also a lot more fun to be actually racing other players, right, other cars. So we get our share of that in a little bit of time as we go through the laps. This is Formula Mazda entry-level open-wheel racing series on Forza. I really love the cars. They are very easy to work with and control, and yeah, I just adore the cars. So another nice little section through the chicane there. Had a bit of an issue at one point through there, but actually did that section pretty well for the most part. It's not an easy section to get yourself through. In a sim game, never mind in the real world. I gotta think, like I said, in the real world, it's fucking terrifying. A little bit of track to drive through it. You know, coming up onto it pretty much flat out. Max brake zone right before you hit it, and then boom, you're down into a fucking downhill S, and it's just yeah, I gotta think in the real world it's gotta be like the most terrifying thing around. There's a few other spots on other tracks. The opening uphill section after you go through the first hairpin at Spa-Francorchamps, and then you go down the back straightaway and then up that first little curvy straight, curvy uphill there. I just love that section's another one that I just adore playing on it. That one's not quite as fun to go through in traffic as this Laguna Sega one is, but still. And Nürburgring, of course, the Nordschleife has like 36 of those spots in the on the course that are a boatload to go through. Again, never in my life would I want to do that at aggressive speeds in a performance vehicle in the real world. I don't think. Terrify the fuck out of me. But you know, in a sim game, it's a boatload of fun when you don't give a crap what happens, right? I think we're coming up on the. I think this is the third last lap that we're on now. I'm starting to get a little bit of. I'm starting to catch a little bit of extra time on the front runners at this point. I think again this is a tire decision on my part because my hards are starting to wear down at this point to the point where they're pretty much kind of halfway between mediums and softs at this point, I'm thinking, and so I've got kind of an ideal grip situation going on right now for the spot, so I'm able to pick up a few seconds on this lap, and I think you'll see by the end of this lap I'm pretty close in behind the ones in front of us. It's not this lap, it's the next one. Or at least behind number 2. Yeah, you can see there I'm starting to get a little bit of, starting to get a tiny bit closer to number 2 at that point. But again, I've pretty much resolved myself at this point that if I could just hold it together and keep driving, I've got a third place podium finish, and I'm pretty happy with that because, like I say, this is like my first legitimate win, so I don't win these things very often. So, a third place podium finish, yeah, I'm pretty chuffed with that. So at this point in the race, I'm pretty much just focused on trying to keep it together. I mean, I'm okay with gaining on the guy in front of me, but I'm not taking any risks at this point to gain on the guy in front of me. I'm more interested in keeping it on the track and making sure that we make it to the end. As Tony Dean always used to say, finish first. And sometimes you might, first finish, and sometimes you might finish first. So yeah, give it that's the way we take it this one, and just keep plodding along here. Yeah, so we're coming up on the final lap here shortly. We're in the second last lap at the moment. You can see me starting to catch some extra time on the car in front of me. They're just kind of catching a little bit of time in the air. There you go. See, I'm a little closer to that guy this time. You got a full view of his car going through the downshoot. Both of the front. Part of it too, I was saying tires was part of it. Part of it too is that they're the two front runners are battling for the lead at this point. And that, of course, also slows them down to a certain extent because they're doing some defensive driving in addition to the just trying to fucking get the fastest speed they can. So at this point, you can see we're going into the final lap, and I'm already starting to catch some extra few seconds here. Again, I think tires and the fact that they're battling, whereas I've got basically free road in front of me, is a massive part of me being able to close the gap here. And I don't think if I hadn't been closing the gap at this stage, I don't think what happened later would have been any good to me. I don't think I would have been there in time to capitalize on it. Which, you know, I'm about to start. We're about to start looking at here. As you can see, we've picked up number 2 car down there in the bottom right corner, following the Devilon. You can see us coming up to the final corner here just before we go into the big downhill chicane, and boom! Off they go into a nice big collision there between 1 and 2, and Ellie is close enough to take advantage, but far enough back to be able to see what's going on and come around the outside without losing it on the dirt and take over the lead for the win. Now I've left number 2 car in there to follow in, just so you guys can see. They were making a pretty good effort to come in and take me out, but they just weren't going to do it at that point. There just was not enough time left in the race for them to manage it. So there we are. We are coming up for Ellie's first win in Forza multiplayer on.
And the final leader, the man who always said you have to first finish to finish first, and who finally found the right set of circumstances.
Thank you for joining me for this segment of MotherShip Racing. We do live streams and pre-recorded races from time to time here, as well as poker streams here on MotherShip Media. So come join us for all that and potentially more in the future here on MotherShip Media.